Welcome to The Trumpet, the official podcast of Elephant Room Productions. As always, I am your host, Robert Jean Pellecchio. As I explained in the intro, I have been gone for a little bit due to some personal and health issues, but I am back, and I'm very, very, very excited to jump back into the world of talking about new theater. Also, for those of you watching this episode, the reason I'm wearing these sporty rainbow gaming headsets is because the guest I'm about to talk to is such an amazing person to talk to that I wasted all of my headphone battery in the first 30 minutes of our pre-interview conversation. So, without further ado, let's bring him on. We're going to be talking to playwright Michael Bucklin. And we are talking about his submission, The Special Relationship. So, Michael, thank you so much for coming on and chatting with me today.
Oh, it's a pleasure, Robert. It's great to be here.
All right. So, in a little bit, as I said, we're going to be talking about The Special Relationship, which is something that I don't actually, unfortunately, something that is not as common an occurrence anymore, but due to us being so spread out with these readings. But this is one of those readings that I was very excited about being able to actually attend and being able to join in on the feedback and the discussion on it. So it's always exciting when I can be in the Zoom where it happens. I'm sorry about that. So we'll be talking about that play in a little bit. But as we always start, Michael, would you mind telling us a little bit about your theater background and, as we say, any of the other theater hats that you may wear?
In regards to how I got started in the theater and how I ended up getting here, I've been thinking a lot about it. The big thing is that I think I was destined to be in the theater in one way or the other. My mother's from Great Britain. She went to Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts. From the very beginning, when we were growing up here in the United States, we would always go to the theater all the time. She would always take us to plays, whether we grew up in Northern California, so we went to ACT, we went to all these different other theaters to see shows, and it became in some ways part of our lives. And from there, that sort of love of the theater was once I got into high school, I got the idea of
recording in progress.
Oh, well, thank you.
I apologize. I realized I forgot to
that's
start
okay.
The Zoom recording.
So when I got into high school, I started doing shows there, and then when I got into I discovered that it was something that I could do. I felt really that I'd found something that I could do at being an actor. And so I was really in a big rush to get to the place, the mecca of acting at that time. And I read a whole lot of biographies about famous people, and they said, go to New York. And so after a year or two of junior college, to which I completely blew off, I got a recommendation to the neighborhood Playhouse, where I studied with Sanford Meisner for 2 years. It was a seminal experience. And then once I was done with that, I got out and started doing trying to get acting gigs. And of course, there's always difficulty with that. And so I started, because I wasn't acting as much as I would like, I started writing. And also I started writing for myself because I found going to Samuel French, the bookstore where we used to get our plays, so incredibly daunting and overwhelming that I decided I should just write my own stuff. And when I started auditioning with it,
that's the way to do it, I think.
Yeah. I think when I started auditioning for producers and things like that, they were less interested in me than they were in the material. So I knew that I was onto something.
Did you audition with your own monologues and
yes,
pieces? That's amazing.
And
that is such a flex.
I know, but I changed my name. I
Gotcha.
was so insecure about it. I was going. I made up a name because I didn't want to seem so much of an egotist. So they said, we like that guy. And so, you're okay, but we like that guy. So from there, I started writing some short plays, and I started working with a small company in New York that did some showcases, and then we did a full-length play that was either off off-Broadway or off-Broadway, depending on the, not the demographics, but the location. But it was, we did this and it was really good. And then the theater company broke up because, and just a bit of advice, never name your company after the apocalypse, because obviously something's going to happen. It was called the Four Writers Theater Company. Don't look it up. I hope it doesn't exist in any form. But the funny thing is that I was going, why did I do that? Why did I name the company after the apocalypse? Because it was just courting disaster. But what I recognized after I wrote the play, and I noticed that a lot of people I went to school with at the Playhouse, a lot of people that I knew were moving up relatively quickly, and I was sort of staying in the same sort of place. And I came to this sort of epiphany that I just didn't know enough. And so I had to go. And so I made the decision to go back to school. I went back to school. My wife and I went to University of Texas. She got a degree in film and I got a degree in film. And just so happens. And then we moved to Los Angeles, where I got my degree and in screenwriting at UCLA. Now, why did I leave the theater? It sounds so awful when I say it, but I'm just going to say this: is that I was intent in going to get my major in theater, and I went in and I met the advisor, and the advisor had absolutely no interest in telling me about anything. She was so busy getting ready for the show that she was going to be in and hanging out with her friends, and I'm going like, look, I'm here. Just tell me what classes I need to do to fulfill the requirement. And then, she was gone. I didn't know what to do. And I said, well, I'm just going to go over here to the cinema, the cinema department. And I met with somebody right away. They gave me the schedule. And then, the next semester I was taking classes there. I still, retained classes in the theater, but basically I was looking to see about getting a degree in cinema at UT. And just to say that UT has a great program in film. And I kept on doing things in the theater. I kept on acting in plays. And then when we moved to UCLA, I think I became more immersed with writing screenplays, writing spec scripts, and the rest of that for a while. But I always was drawn back to writing for the theater. So I haven't done much acting over the years, and I think this is basically because I came to the realization that I'm one of those people that like spending an inordinate amount of time by myself, and then a few short weeks with a group of people. I think this is what Lynn Nottage said about her personality. She basically said, you have to be willing to spend a lot of time by yourself and then a little time with other people. And I found it just sort of fit better. So I've continued writing. The last play that I wrote before the special relationship, was called Signature Photo. It's about a woman photojournalist going all around the world taking these photographs. She takes this really horrific photograph that makes her famous, and then the rest of her career she's sort of living up or living down this one photograph. It has a big cast. It has 10 to 12 people, 16 locations, all the rest of that. And so at the end of that experience, it got some, it won some awards. It did okay, but it was very difficult to produce. And that's what people told me. And so I said, well, I'm going to write something. I'm just going to write something. I'm just going to write something where it's very, very simple. Small cast, 1 to 2 sets. And that's what I set out to do. Also, just a side note, the reason that I had just basically it's just, lights up, lights down with 2 characters most of the time is because, I have a Facebook page and I don't know if it happens to you, but I get advertisements for masterclass. And I don't know if you get that, but I do. And David Mamet kept
my latest recurring ad has been for sign language classes. I think it's a similar thing to message. I haven't gotten a lot of theater ones though, which is weird because of how much my life revolves around theater.
Right. Well, David Mamet kept on showing up on my Facebook page and telling me that he could write a play with a pencil and 2 people in a room. And I was and he was like, and I was just going, okay, I get it. I think I will try it myself. And so that's how sort of the germination of it was kind of a challenge. And that's where I think that's sort of a bit of a thumbnail sketch of my trajectory as a writer and actor. Yeah, and I think sort of the thing is sort of I think the greatest thing that you can do as a person in the theater is to sort of discover your sort of level, what really works for you. And I keep on going back to this again and again. I'm as I said, I would love to be an actor and be that sort of sociable person. And I can be a sociable person when I'm like in front of a class or, doing something, but it's really, really difficult for me to have that, to be in rehearsal for an extended amount of time, to bring something to fruition and to act and do the run of the show and all the rest of that. I find it really, really difficult. And what I find less difficult is, spending hours and hours by myself playing all the parts. So I just, and it's just, it works really well. And,
right.
I don't know, for some reason it's become more difficult over time, but it's become so much easier being a teacher. I teach big
I could
lecture,
see that. Yeah.
Yeah. I teach big lecture classes at University of California, University of California at Riverside and at CSUN, two universities. I teach like cinema and theater and acting and all the rest of that. It's get me in front of a group of people and I'm okay, but get me sort of working interpersonally in a way, it becomes a lot more difficult. And so I unfortunately made that discovery rather late, but I made that discovery all the same. And I think I sort of like being a playwright. I think it's a better role for me.
Well, I guess my follow-up question. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, my follow-up was going to be, you just described your previous play, which, sounds like a very clear farce. If I'm reading the
oh
term
no,
not that was very much a joke. Very much a joke.
I'm sorry.
But there's obviously some very heavy subject matter there, and the play we're going to talk about in a little bit has some, I would argue some pretty heavy subject matter. So do you find that you're drawn more towards dramatic storytelling, or do you branch off into other genres?
In the beginning, I started writing comedy. I also wrote, like some comedy plays and screenplays when I was in grad school. I don't know. I think also because I'm a little bit older. I'm starting to
stop.
Yeah. All I'm saying is I just feel as though there are things that weigh on me, and sort of, what I would say is that there is an attraction towards dealing with things that go, into a darker area. And I think that's I'm not that sort of person outside, clearly.
Right.
But it's, when I'm on my own, it's sort of like I move into that area. Also, there are levels of concern. Signature Photo was about, a moral choices that we have.
Right.
The play that, the special relationship also deals with something that's, politically still within, still politically part of our, part of our consciousness. So, So for whatever reason, I find myself drawn to darker stories, even though I don't consider myself a dark person. So.
Well, since we're moving in that direction anyway, can you set up for us the basic plot premise of the special relationship, and then just give us a little intro for the scene that we're about to see and or hear, depending on if people are listening or watching this podcast?
Okay, so probably we're going to be watching the opening. I think that's going to be the easiest thing to queue up. Basically, the story is about two intelligence analysts. One who works for the CIA, the other one who worked for MI5 for the security service. They've had a long-standing relationship over the past 12 or 13 years when they both worked in London. They get together again after a certain amount of time of being separated. And the thing is that what happens with the night that they spend together is they start going over the actions that they made during the global war on terror, which means the moral choices that they made, the mistakes that they may have made, sort of what they're able to live with now that the war on terror, now that we've reached the end of the Afghanistan war, has ended in, I would guess you would say, abject failure. There's not a nice way to say, we didn't get what we want out of Afghanistan. It's back to the Taliban. If we're talking about Iraq, I mean, Iraq is basically closely aligned to Iran now. We could not have handled this in a worse way possible. So I think it's sort of a coming, this sort of reckoning that these characters are having. What prompts this, though, is the release of the torture report in 2014. So this takes place the weekend before the release of this document that basically exposed the CIA's handling of detainees, and so this was it's a really actually a very big deal, and the CIA agent comes to make a confession.
All right, well, thank you. Let us take a listen and a watch of the scene, and when we come back, we'll be talking more about the special relationship.
Is this the Freedom Advocates thing?
Recognizing the voice, Kate turns. The two women face each other for a moment.
Yes, it is. But I'm afraid you've missed the program.
Does that include the panel discussion as well?
I'm afraid so.
Kate drags several boxes out from under the table and starts to load them with books and magazines.
Perhaps there might be a chance for another discussion.
I'm sure there's one to have after all this time.
I'm sorry it's taken so long, Catherine. I mean, a lot has happened, obviously. You're working again.
I had to get a job at some point.
But Freedom Advocates? It's a bit of a departure.
From what?
From what you were doing before.
Which was?
Kate carries a box of publications over to the dolly.
Intelligence. For your government.
I've no idea what you're talking about. I was with the Department of Environment, Food and Rural Affairs. At least that's where my government said I worked for 15 years.
Kate loads another box onto the cart.
Had I been involved in a branch that dealt with intelligence, I certainly wouldn't have been hired by Freedom Advocates.
They wouldn't appreciate that kind of experience?
No, they wouldn't. Which in this instance means you have the advantage.
Do you really think I'd burn you?
Who knows what you would or wouldn't do? What are you now? Assistant to the Deputy Director.
Wow, you keep up.
I read.
It's a job.
It's a lot more than that. You're 7th floor, executive branch. I saw you on the television a few weeks ago giving a report to a committee on the threats of cyber terrorism. You're in the public eye now.
I wouldn't consider 30 minutes on C-SPAN being in the public eye.
But you're becoming a known quantity in Washington.
Kate fills the last box with brochures.
And here you are, all bright and shiny in your smart-looking suit.
No, I can't buy my clothes at Urban Outfitters anymore. Wearing a t-shirt for a band I'm old enough to have actually seen.
The girl I knew could still bring it off. You, I'm not so sure.
Kate sets the last box on the dolly.
I was sorry to hear about your father.
He was sick for a long time, it was expected.
Kate marches behind the table and pulls the plug on the monitor. The screen goes dark.
I wanted to be there for the funeral.
But you weren't.
Kate puts the monitor on the dolly.
I'm sorry.
Kate says nothing. She picks up the laptop from the counter and slips it into her bag.
I liked him, you know. I remember that first time when we all met for the lunch at the Travelers Club, dressed in that Savile Row suit with the university tie. He cut quite a handsome figure, even as an older gentleman.
Yes, he did.
Kate pulls the skirting and tablecloth off the counter. She drops them both on the back of the reception area.
A real foreign service man, really knew geopolitics, the power plays, the national interests of each country.
That's all very nice of you to say, Jessica, but you do see I'm rather busy right now. I have to be out of here before the venue charges me for another hour.
The realities of working for a non-profit.
As opposed to the realities of working for a bloated bureaucracy.
It does pay better.
So I remember.
Jess moves to a poster display and breaks it down.
I'll do that.
You said you needed to get out of here. So let's get this done.
And then what, Jessica? Really? It's been a year.
Kate kicks out the legs from the folding table.
With no communication at all for 7 months.
Jess puts the poster and stand on the dolly, then tries to help Kate with the table.
I'll get the other end.
Please don't.
It'll be easier.
That's not the...
If we do this together.
I don't want your help, all right?
Okay.
Kate carries the table to the rear of the room and leans it against the back wall.
I'm sorry I had to go dark for a while, Catherine, but things got complicated.
Right, because of your job.
No, because of yours.
Kate turns back to Jess.
What did you think would happen, Catherine? You working for these people.
I didn't think about it one way or the other.
Maybe you should have.
You're saying it's my fault you ghosted me?
No, but you do understand how difficult it made things.
Kate breaks down the second poster display and carries it over to the dolly.
I mean, look at this event tonight. Victims of the War on Terror.
There were victims, Jess.
Yes, there were. But a discussion about victims always leads to a discussion of who is responsible.
They don't always go after your country.
They go after it enough.
And yet here you are.
Kate picks up her coat and puts it on.
It wasn't easy, believe me. I had to wait for an opportunity. A strategy meeting at the London office. It could have been handled with a conference call, but I insisted on an FTF.
And how did you handle tonight? Did you leave your mobile at the hotel so you wouldn't be tracked? Take several forms of public transport to avoid being followed? Use side streets so you would get picked up by CCTV?
What if I had to do all those things?
Jess moves closer to Kate.
I'd have to wonder why you'd go through the trouble.
You really have to wonder?
Jess leans in to kiss Kate.
I had to see you.
Another kiss.
I always have to see you.
Jess then steps back.
So who really has the advantage?
I don't know. But I suppose we'll have to find out.
The two women gaze at each other, trying to gauge the other's real intentions. The lights fade, blackout, end of scene.
And we're back. So, Michael, as we were talking about prior to that scene, obviously this play is a barrel of laughs.
Yes.
No, and like I said, I thought it was interesting what you said earlier, because you tapped into a question that I myself will ask a lot of playwrights. You have a very clear idea of the difference between screenplays and scripts. And one of the questions we ask all the time is, we have our general feedback on what, whether or not character arcs and motives make sense, or if the audience or the readers are left with any questions. But one of the kind of black and white questions we always ask is this play producible?
Yeah.
And there are so many plays that I have read over the past 5 years, and I say this very kindly. I'm not, I'm not yucking someone's yum, but we get, we have seen some scripts before. In fact, one that I was actually almost compelled. There was one I read a little bit ago that I enjoyed very much and would like to see it produced, because it looks like it can be produced in kind of a stylistic way, but it's definitely a lot of characters, different place every scene. We've read plays before where there are 12 characters on stage at any given time, and you realize, well, in a film, you just cut away, you do the close-up of Robert Downey Jr. and Chris Evans, and it doesn't matter that those other actors are there. But on stage, you have to imagine that 12 people are just standing in a room waiting. And also what I think is very interesting is there is one playwright in particular, and I feel very bad that I can't remember her name offhand, but one of my biggest feedbacks, I was like, yeah, there's a lot of places and location changes, and the flow just feels like this would be better suited as a film. And when I interviewed her for the podcast, she told me, oh, I originally wrote this as a screenplay and adapted it to be a play, and now I'm readapting it to be a screenplay. So I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
So my first takeaway from this piece, that's a long roundabout way to say that I definitely got that impression that you were very consciously making this a producible piece. I believe it's 3 characters, I believe.
Yeah, there are 3 characters, and most of the time it's just 2. The third character shows up twice for, at some point in the near the middle of the play, and then shows up at the very, very end. And the rest of the time it's just these 2 characters. And part of the intention was producibility. There are a couple of motives that I had. Producibility was really, really important. The other thing that was really, really important to me that I really create some really terrific roles for the people that were going to be playing this. And this was something that was important to me as well. I always go with the idea is that, having grown up in the entertainment business, the sort of, dearth of really good roles. And this may be different now, but, when I was an actor, there would seem to be a dearth of roles for women who were getting into their late 30s and early 40s. And also the thing is that I like the material, and it drew me. This situation between these 2 people, drew me to it, and I wanted to keep them in the same room long enough for the truth to come out. And I think that was the fun thing about it, which was, you keep people in the same room long enough, they're going to start telling the truth to each other eventually. And I didn't intend it to be a well-made play or the most producible play, although I was cognizant of that.
Yeah.
But I just felt I needed to keep these people where they could not escape from each other, and they had to actually talk to each other, because that way they would get down to the real root of the relationship. So those were the motives that I had. And it's eminently producible. It only has 1 set. The other one is a suggested set.
Yeah.
And so, you could easily just put it in front of a curtain and it would work out just fine.
It reminds me a lot of theater that my partner and I work at very frequently is the Candlelight Dinner Theater in Delaware, who, as you can imagine, were hit doubly hard over the past year, because not only are they a performance venue, but they are also technically a restaurant. So the 2 things that you can't have during a pandemic. So they reopened this year. And the first show they did was a play called Clever Little Lies. That is, it's definitely a similar concept in a sense of it is people in a room together that have absolutely no choice but to talk to each other, maybe about subjects they don't want to talk about. But that's also, the bulk of it takes place in a family living room, but the opening scene is at the locker room of a tennis court. Right. And the way that was created, it was very clearly, it was just 2 of the set pieces from the living room just turned around, and it did not take up the whole stage at all. It was very much just centered. You got the clear, idea that you were watching something on a stage, and then as soon as those set pieces went back, suddenly you were in a living room.
Right.
So I definitely, and that was something that came up in the feedback, is somebody, I think, I want to say it was Lauren, but somebody, somebody had pointed out that, like, yeah, it's mostly 1 set, that, that first scene, I don't know how intricate you could get with that. And I was like, we kind of all decided, well, you don't have to get that intricate with it, because it is that 1 location.
Right.
It's at the airport, right?
No, it's actually at the friend's house. It's
that's sorry. No,
yeah,
you're right.
it's a Quaker meeting place. It's also where peace activists usually end up going in London, and it's the reception area. So how I saw it, how I envisioned it, is you could just have it in front of the curtain, have a single
just
table,
a desk.
and with the table with the the display. for freedom advocates, and just the people to play in front of it. Once they're done, push everything out, open the curtain to show the set.
And I've done those shows before, and that is always a fun reveal. I was in a production of MAME many years ago, where it was back when I was in high school, actually, where MAME's living room and foyer areas always has to be grand, has the big staircase and everything. And the first scene where it's Agnes taking Patrick to Auntie Bame's house, it's just done in front of the curtain. And I remember like a friend of mine who was a little older than me at the time said he saw it, and like in that opening moment got the impression of like, well, it's high school theater, it's gonna be kids in whatever costumes walking across the curtain. And then that curtain opened and he was just like like just blown away at the size of the set. So that's the kind of thing. I'm also a director, so when I read these scripts, as much as I want to be in the moment of the story,
right,
there's always a little bit in the back of my head of like, how would I stage this? How would I create the set? How would I create that? And I got a little tickle in my brain thinking about the curtain opening and how imagined or real you want to make that full set.
Yeah, I think that a lot in the I take one of the plays that I really like that I didn't base it on, but it's one of my favorite plays that came out a while ago. But it's Skylight by David Hare, and it has like one sort of like it has a council flat, okay, and so basically it's just your basics of an apartment, and all the work goes on in this one place. And I was really attracted to that, and I wanted to just also sort of take the time to also give the scenic designer an idea of building a set that would actually look lived in, which I thought would be really, really nice. And actually somebody, you can, as I describe in the introduction, I mean, it shows the progression of time. You have some albums, you have some CDs, you have some other things, you have a flat screen TV. So you can tell that somebody has lived there for a long time. And you can also sort of guess about the person's age. So you can get a better indication of what it is. And I think it's also great because, the actors are always on there. And this is kind of the thing that I really like about it is that there isn't any downtime. So there's no time for the actor to get distracted and get out of the piece. It just moves along through the entire piece until we get the two sort of scene breaks. And I think that that's really helpful to the actor.
I mean, honestly, it moved for us in the reading as well. I mean, it was it did not feel like, it felt a lot shorter actually when we got to, because of how quickly and how rapidly it moves, which again, just to kind of ring a bell in the direction of our actors, considering so many of these, as we talked about in the break, so many of these are cold readings. It is I was even finding myself at times trying to keep up with their speed and quickness. It felt like they had these characters like in their bones, which I suppose is the testament of well-written and well-rounded characters.
Well, that's nice of you to say. I always get the idea of as lines in a play are I'm ripping off from Aaron Sorkin here, but that the lines, that the dialogue is like a song. And so the thing is that you hear sort of the back and forth going on, and it's in some ways, when I work with actors, as a teacher or whatever, I always say with some plays you kind of just get on the train and then it'll just carry you. And especially if the writing is just really, really, is really, really back and forth and it has that rhythm, find that rhythm and you don't have to do quite as much work. And that was what I was trying to do with this piece as well. Because it's just so much fun. The idea is that you're just boom, 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 back and forth, and you hit that rhythm, and you don't have to, how can I say, act out the lines as much. You, in some ways, you obviously act the intention and all the rest of it, but the thing is, you just catch it's literally like catching a train, getting onto the train, and then you just ride with it. And when it works, it's just kind of glorious.
I mean, I would argue that it definitely works
Yeah.
in this
Oh,
instance.
thank you.
And I, like I said, I was, it's such a special moment for me to be able to, be a part of these readings. There was a point where pre-pandemic it was never a question because I had the microphone. So I was at every reading. Once we switched over to Zoom, we got a much wider pool of actors because we weren't factoring in the travel time to my dining room table. Right. The schedules opened up and we got a lot more opportunities, but unfortunately, that just meant that my schedule did not always align with being able to be present live at the readings. So being able to be there in the moment and watching those actors, discover these moments, discover these words, is something truly, truly remarkable. And I'm really excited to find out any more information on where this piece is going. And I guess I should ask at this point, do you have a current trajectory for this piece?
Right now, after listening to the reading a number of times, I am going to be doing some. I've already started some minor edits to it because there are certain things that were that were brought up during the comment section that I really thought needed to be addressed. There's a couple other things that I want to see. There are a couple of moments. I think Jess is the very difficult character because she's the one that really, she's bringing the news. She has the revelation. She's the one that was involved in detention centers and the rest of that. I wanted to actually have some place where we see more evidence of what the relationship was. And I think that that's really important. I really wanted to create a really, and I don't want to say mature relationship, but a relationship that still retains a lot of passion, but also at the same time, they know each other. They're used to each other's rhythms. They're used to each other being around. They have a repartee that works out really well, that you have when you spend a lot of time with someone. So I'm working on that a little bit. It's not a big rewrite or anything like that. The other thing is that I'm sort of, there's one element that I've never been able to put in the play that I really want to put into the play, and I've not been able to do it. It's just a little detail, and it's just for me. So, and I don't know what's going to happen after that. I'm starting to submit it out.
I love those moments, by the way, when you have those very. I have them as an actor. Like there's and actually even as a director. There are definitely moments where I will direct a student to deliver a line or do an action in a certain way, and it's foreign to them, but I'm like, there are at least 16 parents in the audience that will get this, and even if nobody does, I will get it, and it will make me smile. I actually
I think for me, it's just one moment it's just one little detail that from all the research that I did on this piece it's just something that I wanted so badly to put into the play. It's just about sort of a CIA protocol thing, and the thing is, it's not even that important. But the idea is that it really helped me in writing the play, and I feel really bad that it's not included in it. So hopefully I can get that in. But basically what I'm doing now is I'm finishing it up and finishing up the next draft, getting ready for a whole raft of submissions. I haven't really thought about getting something together out here, but as the pandemic recedes even more, I think that may be something that I may be thinking in the future. I don't have somebody who's going to produce it quite yet, but it's only been out for a few months actually. So yours was one of the first, not one of the first.
Wow.
Within the first flight it was one of the first. I've only been sending it out for about 3 months. Wow. So yeah.
I am honored that we got to be one of the first looky-loos at this script.
Yeah, it was just a really, really great experience. I really, really enjoyed it, and there's nothing better than hearing a play being read by actors, and it's just one of those things that I really, really like. So yeah, and thank you. It was just a great experience, and
absolutely.
Hopefully we'll see. Hopefully we'll see how it goes. but yeah, it was yeah, and thank you for, and I guess I get a feling that things are kind of winding up in regards to the podcast, but I do want to thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And are you going to do that last question thing, or are we?
I am, just to kind of wind this down. Especially considering the topic of the play was a little heavier. So I'm going to throw out one that I've never thrown out before.
Okay.
And I don't know how this will go, but I'm just going to roll the dice and go with it. If the special relationship were to be adapted into a musical, what composer or what musical theater presence would be your top choice to adapt it?
Hold on 1 second. Sorry about that.
That's quite all right.
Actually, that's okay. I have to take that call in a few moments. It would definitely be Stephen Sondheim.
Funny, I was gonna suggest the same thing.
Okay, hold on 1 second.
I am so sorry.
Can you turn off the recording 1 second?
I'll just pause it for a second.
Okay, give me 1 second because I have to take this call.
No worries. 1 second later.
Yes, it would be Stephen Sondheim. I have great memories of Stephen Sondheim's, Assassins, and also, Sweeney Todd, and just, and how Sondheim keeps on, showing up again. I recently saw Marriage Story on Netflix.
Doesn't he sing
at the end, Being Alive?
Yeah.
And it's just, and you just go, and it's just this amazing moment, and you just go, wow, that's an amazing song, and it sort of pulls together this whole relationship that is now breaking apart. And I thought, obviously this person is one of the greatest writers of the century. And the thing is that I teach theater. I'm just going to say this really quick. And when I was growing up, I did a lot of musicals. I never thought that I was going to be a musical person, obviously, because I don't sing that well. But I find myself really being drawn to musicals in a really, really powerful way when especially now that I'm teaching, because how much, in some ways, it replicates the theater of the original theater, which means we have a chorus, we have people singing, we have like music and all the rest of that, which really goes back to I think it hits us on more of a spiritual level than regular plays do. And I think that I especially go back to Dear Evan Hansen, and just that play just slays me. It just kills me. And it kills me from the very first song in a way that it would take hours, it would take hours of character building to get to. And so,
Sidebar, the opening song of that show is actually one of my favorite songs in the show, which makes me very disappointed. I still want to see the movie. I'm still excited, but I'm very disappointed that Anybody Have a Map will not be in that film. So apparently it exists as a from what I have heard, it exists as like when they're at the school, they're at like a pep rally or something, and it's like an Easter egg. It's like the song that the band is playing, and I'm like, I'll take it. But it's one of my favorite openings of a musical.
It's excuse me one second. It actually is in my I have sort of an introduction to theater, introduction to acting class. It has like 90 students, and it's still one of the three or four plays that I have the students read, and it almost always goes over really, really well.
Yeah.
And I make them listen to the soundtrack, and they really, I think, it's a play that my students can actually really identify with, and I think that and it's also because it's a musical, because it just sort of it mainlines you into your emotions, where other plays have to take a lot more work. Anyway, does that answer your question? Sondheim, I would love to see the Sondheim version of The Special Relationship.
I would too, just, if for no other reason than to just, that's the only energy I can think of that can match the snappiness and the back and forth of the dialogue that you've created in this piece.
But I think if you're going to do that, it would completely blow out you wouldn't be able to do it in an entire room. You'd have to like go off and show them meeting and all the rest of these things. And I have a whole history about these two characters, about you know, I have a whole history about them that also sort of, filters back to what is going on at that moment. The idea is that you would, if you're going to do a musical about it, it probably couldn't stay in that room, and you probably have to blow it out and actually tell the larger story of this relationship.
We can get Sondheim on the line after this call, and we'll start chatting. Awkward jump in from editing Robert here. Just a reminder, this episode was recorded in fall of 2021, about a month and a half before we lost greatest composer of our generation, Stephen Sondheim. So that makes this part of the interview just a little bit tricky to listen to now. But I still stand by my comments that this show is very well suited for Sondheim style, and hopefully the next Stephen Sondheim will pick it up someday. Anyway, back to the end of the episode.
Actually, did you see Documentary Now?
I was just going to bring that up, actually. It is
genius.
Here's the thing. I love Documentary Now for the same reason I love Schmigadoon, which is it would have been so easy for them to just do a parody of musicals and leave it at that. It's the hyper specificity of knowing Sondheim and knowing not only those songs, but the original documentary. Like, the outfit that Paul Appel is wearing is the same outfit that Elaine Stritch is wearing. And there's a point in that original documentary where I want to say I don't think it's Sondheim. I think it might be James Lapine or something, but someone says that she sounds flaccid. And I'm like, I Gotta Go is one of my favorite songs.
It's actually, I think it's such a great, they walk the line in Documentary Now. They really walk the line between, they come really, really close to where it just goes over from parody just to sort of making fun, where it just sort of walks the line and you go, yeah, I would kind of like to see that musical. In some ways it's almost that good. And
I heard they basically, in writing that episode, like, I heard that like Seth Meyers and John Mulaney essentially like wrote an entire musical.
I just think it's great, and it's just we watch it every like couple of months and all the rest of that, and the original documentary is pretty amazing too.
In fact, I think actually as we wind down, I think I'm going to go listen to Christmas Tips.
Okay. But what I would, it's just it's just so it's actually, it's really too bad that project for Broadway, filming the cast singing the songs was just kind of a one-off. It would have been really, really nice to see other things happen. Anyway, we're gonna I guess we're calling it a day.
I suppose I don't want to keep you away from you've given me a lot of time today, especially it's the longest pre-interview I've done in this podcast in a very long time.
All I'm going to say is this is just all difficulties will pass. I think you're going to be fine. You're very lucky to have somebody with you who supports you at the same time. I think that's really a really great thing, and it'll pass. I think things will work out just fine. And that being said, that's all I got. Well, actually, I have a lot more. I mean, I took a crap load, and I wrote a whole bunch of notes detailing my entire life and my entire life in the theater. See, this is what it's like. I just go, I have to super prepare. It's different. I'm not in the mood. I'm not at that age where I feel like, I'm just gonna wing it.
I will say it is a really good thing to see as a podcast host and an interviewer when my voice makes up far less of the episode than my guest. It is very comforting because I can just sit back, and it's like whenever who is it? It's like whenever Conan O'Brien goes on a talk show, Colbert's always like, I haven't said a thing in the past 10 minutes. I've just sat back and let you tell the story about your horse.
Yeah, and I think I thank you again for the opportunity, and I thought that this was really great. And as I said, the reading was really, really helpful. And thank you again, and thank you to your partner as well. And thank you, and hopefully we'll see what happens with this script. But that being said, it was an absolute pleasure talking with you.
It was a pleasure talking with you too, Michael.
All right.
So thank you again for listening. As of now, our submissions are closed, but once they open up, you can send in your plays to submissions@elephantroomproductions.com. Just keep watching our social media for that. We'll have an announcement of when those submissions are open again. But for the time being, as always, I am your host, Robert Jean Pellecchio, signing off.